What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Fantasy Files podcast, where we talk about our favorite fantasy series and topics. We are your co-hosts, Spencer and Gabe, and today we are continuing our discussion of Deadbeat by Jim Butcher. We'll be talking about a couple other facets of the book. Also, it helps the channel a lot when you hit those like and subscribe buttons. So if you've enjoyed this content, please consider supporting us in that way. You can also follow us on Twitter at Files Fantasy to keep up with us there. But let's get back into this book and talk about the next couple topics here. So let's go into our favorite quotes. Did you have any favorite ones?
Why don't you kick that one off? Let me look and see here.
Okay. I really like the beginning of the book here. It says, on the whole, we're a murderous race. According to Genesis, it took as few as 4 people to make the planet too crowded to stand, and the first murder was a fratricide. Genesis says that in a fit of jealous rage, the very first child born to mortal parents, Cain, snapped and popped the first metaphorical cap in another human being. The attack was a bloody, brutal, violent, reprehensible killing. Cain's brother, Abel, probably never saw it coming. As I opened the door to my apartment, I was filled with a sense of empathic sympathy and intuitive understanding for freaking Cain.
Yep.
Yeah. I really love that opening. Especially the intro music that is playing at that point is like kind of like this spacey, nebulous song that's playing. It's in the audiobook.
Yep.
It's a really good intro, I felt like.
For sure. I've got one here. This moment is when they're all at Harry's I guess apartment or whatever you want to call it, his boarding
His
house.
basement.
Yeah, exactly. And the zombies, Gervain's attacking them basically. Zombies have broken the wards. They're waiting around and Butters is kind of in the back and he's by a window, and all of a sudden the window breaks and they get Butters. And so Harry and Thomas are talking, they're thinking about it, and like, we got to think of a plan. So they make a truce with Gervain and with Liver Spots, who is Cassius,
Right.
to figure this out. And so eventually the truth leads to Harry taking Liver Spots, bring him somewhere, giving him the thing, dropping him off, and they get Butters back. And so he says to Liver Spots, you're riding shotgun. And when I say riding shotgun, I mean Thomas will stick the shotgun up your ass and pull the trigger if you try anything funny. And I was like, dude, that's so sick. Like, that's like Harry and Thomas in a nutshell right there. Like, they're the badass or not twins, but badass brothers.
Yeah.
I don't know. Exactly. I just thought that was super cool.
I love that quote. I like this one by Cowell, which is hearkening back to what we read in Grave Peril during Bianca's vampire party. And this is a quote that is like, this sparks a number of theories within the Dresden community. And Cowell says, they're talking about the party, and Cowell says to Harry, a great many things of significance happened on that night, most of which you are not aware.
Yeah. Yep.
And there's a lot of things, like if you go back and read Grave Peril after, however many rereads, if you go back and read it, there's a lot of like really important things that happen at Bianca's party that are going to come into play probably in Mirror is when they're going to be really taken advantage of.
Yeah.
I love this quote by Butters. They're talking about Oktoberfest, and Butters says, I won't let the Jolly Rogers get the best of me this year. I mean, come on, 5 guys named Roger? How much POLKA could really be in their souls? And then Harry says, I have no freaking clue, I answered. He says,
Yep.
I answered truthfully.
Oh, that's awesome.
Because he's just like, I don't
He's like,
even know
I
what that
can't answer
means.
that. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And then later on, Butters falls down with his POLKA suit on, and the quote is, Harry, he panted from the pile of POLKA.
Oh, that's great, dude. Butters in his POLKA suit. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. It's like a big part of this book. I got
Yeah.
oh man, where am I gonna find it? Okay, I've got one here. And this just this kind of goes along with Butters and Harry and whatnot. But so the Alphas allow Harry to borrow their new SUV, right? It's a brand new
Yeah.
SUV. It's got
Yes.
navigation, all sorts of stuff. And eventually, after him driving it, it starts to break, and it continues to say, "The door is ajar. The door is ajar," over and over again. And I can't remember
Yeah.
who it was that said, that said something about it to Butters. Maybe it was
It was
Thomas. Was it?
Kirby.
Oh, it
It
was
was
Kirby.
Kirby.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then Butters is like, it gets sort of zen after a while. Time is a river. Life is a journey. The door is ajar. And I was like,
Yeah.
dude, so sick. So sick.
I love that.
Yeah.
I like this back and forth with Gravane and Harry, and he uses this. I think it's French or something, but it means in cold blood. And he says, "You intend to murder me in Cru Ardelius," or maybe it's Latin.
Yeah.
In Cru Ardelius, and Harry says, "No, I'll do it right here."
Yeah. 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 Oh, yeah. That's good.
And then Harry and Sheila, they're in the store, and this is right after he had gone into the back. This is when he saw her for the first time, and he brings up his gun because he's like surprised by her.
Yeah.
And he says, "Maybe I'll bump into you again sometime." And she says, "I'd like that, except next time without the gun."
Yeah.
And then Harry says, "One of those old-fashioned girls, huh?"
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
Oh, so all this stuff with Harry and his father was super
Oh,
sad.
yeah. Yeah.
Man, I definitely teared up a little bit at this, like when he sees his mom in the last book.
Yep.
So now he's seen both his parents. He's officially like, I mean, he knew his dad, but he's officially seen both his parents in the past couple of years, which I thought was pretty cool.
And I want to say too, with the dad thing, I think there's more to that. The way that the dad described what he was, and he was real, and he was an entity, and that he was not allowed to contact Harry until then. And I don't know if that was Lashiel. Like, I don't know if that was Lashiel's doing. I didn't get the feeling
Ooh.
that it was. I really didn't get the feeling that it was. It could have been, but that sparked a lot of questions in my mind, or not theories, because I don't know how much further to go with it. But it made me think. Yeah.
I never thought about it being Lashiel.
Yeah, I mean, it could. She could do it, and she could manage that just fine with everything. But at the same time, like, I truly did not get the feeling that it was her doing that. So, like, I have a feeling that
Did
there's
you get the feeling that she was Sheila?
not in the beginning, I didn't.
Yeah.
But after reading it and seeing kind of her boundaries and what
Yeah.
what she did, like, I still don't think that she could have done it. I could be totally wrong, but then if she didn't do it, I'm
Interesting.
very curious to the being that was restricting his dad from speaking with her. But then,
Yeah.
then the other half of me is like, it could be Sheila. It's so easy. It could be Sheila.
Yeah.
Like, it would be so easy for her to do that, and then question solved. But yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know. Just a thought.
Yeah, he says I wasn't allowed to contact you before, not before the others had crossed the line.
Yeah, yeah.
Who are the others?
Exactly.
Like,
And what is the
oh, I'm
line?
so
Is it death or
curious.
is it something else? Yeah, for sure.
Ooh.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I know.
I think it's referring to the line of death, like crossing
Yeah.
the line into
Yeah,
the
that
spirit world.
that would
But
make
like
sense.
why? Like why is he contained by certain people having to die first?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he has a couple quotes here. He says, "Yes, I'm dead, but it doesn't mean that I'm not here, that I don't love you, boy." And by this point, I'm like fully tearing up, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And Harry's tearing up, and we're crying together.
Yep.
And and then he has this other line where he says, it's probably the most beautiful line in the book. He says, "My boy, there's so much still ahead of you: pain, joy, love, death, heartache, terrible waters, despair, hope. I wish I could have been with you longer, helped you to prepare for it."
Yeah.
Oh man, I get chills.
I know, I do too.
Yeah. And it's funny, like, knowing what we know about the rest of the series, we've seen all of this happen. We've seen the pain, we've seen the joy, we've seen the love, we've seen the death, we've seen the heartache, we've seen the terrible waters, we've seen despair, we've seen hope. And so I love how this is really, really good foreshadowing. And I just love how he put the terrible waters in there, like, as a, like, having read the series, we know what that is, right? Yeah,
for sure.
So I love the foreshadowing here. And I think it's just a beautiful line, and this whole moment with him and his dad just made me tear up really good.
Likewise.
I already talked about this, but when Harry says, "Just here to talk," and then he nods towards Sheila, I thought that was super funny, because Bach is like,
Bach's like, what the heck is going on here?
Obviously, like, one of the most recognizable quotes in the fandom. I couldn't not put it in here. Right when the whole thing with Gravane is happening, Butters is freaking out. He grabs Butters by the shoulder, and he looks him in the face, and he says, "We are not going to die. Thomas is too pretty to die, and I am too stubborn to die. And most of all, tomorrow is Oktoberfest, and POLKA will never die."
Yes.
And Butters is like, "What?" And he's like, "POLKA will never die." And they start, like, shouting it together. And Thomas is just like, "What the fuck?"
Oh man, dude, that's so good.
Yeah. I gotta get a T-shirt or something that says "POLKA will
never die." Exactly.
Racing to the finish line here. Let's go through our favorite moments. What were some of your favorite moments that we either have or haven't talked about up until now?
Okay, so my favorite moment of all time in this book, and this is gonna sound kind of silly, but just preface this with how much I love Mouse as a character in this book. It is when Harry, Gravane, or not Gravane, Cassius has got the upper hand on Harry, and he's manacled up, and Harry's like, "I'm gonna die," and he like cuts Harry's stomach open, not all the way, but like the flesh, and he's like, like Harry's like, "I'm going to die," and all of a sudden, Butter, who Harry told to run, don't turn around, don't stop running, run, do not stop, run until you find somewhere safe. Like, he was so serious about it. So Butter's just like freaked out, takes off running. And then, as it's coming to the point where Harry's like, "I'm gonna die, like he's gonna kill me right now, like he's gonna slit my throat or bash my head and whatever else," and dies. And all of a sudden, Cassius is doing this like crazy monologue, he's talking, he's crazy and whatnot, and Harry's like, "I'm glad that I had him talking because he couldn't hear Mouse's footsteps on the linoleum floor." And all of a sudden, Mouse trucks him over, gets him, they tussle, they fight. Butters even jumps in and helps, chokes the guy out. But my favorite moment is when Mouse finally gets his mouth around his neck, and Harry looks at Cassius, and he's like, "I gave you a chance. I told you what would happen." And then he says, "Kill him, Mouse." And Mouse crushes the guy's throat. Dude, that's like my favorite. Ooh. I get blisters, or not blisters, but like goosebumps talking about that. That part, or like listening to it and stuff. So that's probably one of my favorite parts of this whole book, is that scene where he tells Mouse to like end him, and when Mouse listens. And I don't know, it's just super cool.
Yes, absolutely. I definitely get chills at that point, because like you said, Mouse has him on the ground and is his teeth are right there, but he's not going to kill him if Harry doesn't want him to kill him.
Exactly. Yes.
And so and yeah, he's just like, I gave you a chance.
Yeah,
like I told you could go. Like I gave you the chance to leave.
Yep.
And he just gives the order and Mouse does it.
Yes, dude. I just love that. I love that.
Such a great scene.
Yes.
I think overall my favorite scene is the one with Harry in Sheila's apartment.
Oh, yeah.
And Butters comes up.
Yep.
And we finally, dude, I remember when I read this book for the first time, it was seriously like, it felt like I was reading like a Dean Koontz book or something where there's like a huge twist.
Yep.
And I was just like, what?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
And it's such a good twist.
Yes.
You know, we find out that Sheila is Lashiel. And then you realize you're starting to put all these things together, and you're like, oh, all that stuff that happened in Box Bookstore.
Yeah.
You know, Billy the werewolf telling him that he's talking to himself and being worried about him. Billy and Georgia recognize that something hasn't been right with Harry ever since Death Masks.
Yep.
And it's just all these little things that come flooding into your mind when this scene happens. And it's such a great scene. And Butters is like terrified. He's like, oh my God, like this super powerful wizard has gone crazy.
Yeah.
Like he has gone insane.
Yep.
And I love the moment where the part that like that kicks off the whole reveal is Butters saying, Harry, can you turn on a light or something?
Yeah.
And Harry's like, sure. And he pulls up his light. And Butters like, oh, thank God it's so dark in here. And he's like, wait, is it? And then he's like, Harry turns to say something to Sheila. He's like, oh, this is Butters. And Butters like, who are you talking to?
Yeah.
And oh man, it's such a good scene.
Dude.
I love it.
Yeah,
I love it every time. Speaking of your Cassius scene, he puts a death curse down on Harry that says die alone. And what I thought was cool about this, do I have the quote? Oh yeah, here it is. Harry sees his father one last time, and they talk about the death curse. Harry is worried he will never have love, never have a wife and children. And Malcolm, his father, says, everyone dies alone. When you go through the other side, it's a door. It's one person wide, but it doesn't mean you're alone before you die. And believe me, you aren't alone on the other side. And Harry worries that he made a terrible choice by employing this necromantic magic, and his dad tells him that there is such a thing as black and white, but that Harry had done it to protect people, not for his own benefit. It doesn't make it right, but it doesn't make you a monster either. And this is very similar to a conversation that Harry has with someone in White Knight. And which is one of my favorite scenes. I can't wait to talk about that scene. But you know, basically, you still, he's telling him like, you still have free will. You still get to decide what you will become as long as you believe that you are still responsible for your choices. Then as long as you believe you are still responsible for your choices, you still are. And then he says, you've got a good heart, son, listen to it. And it's just another like really heartwarming, you know, moment with his dad, but it also harkens back to this idea of choices. And you know, everything in life comes down to choices, and you can either choose to do the right thing or the wrong thing. And you know, Dresden Files kind of has this theme of like, yeah, there's like kind of a gray area that Harry operates in, but really like there is objective good and there is objective evil.
Yeah.
And you can make a choice between the two.
Yep.
I love this theme all throughout the book about choices. what did you think about how Morgan kind of interacted with Dresden there at the end? Do you remember this?
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah. You're talking about when Corpse Taker took over Lucio, that scene, kind of. Oh, are
No,
okay, you're talking about
at the
after.
very end.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So Morgan's kind of forced to swallow his pride almost, right?
Yeah.
And he comes to Harry's basement, whatever you want to call it. And he has, like I said, swallow his pride, and he says, I don't like you. I've never liked you. But I'm learning that you are not your intentions aren't evil, basically is what he says. Like he's
Right.
like, I know that your intentions aren't evil. And then dude, another favorite part is when Morgan has to say, he's like, thank you. Like he like grumbles
Yeah.
like really tight. And what does Harry,
Yeah.
do you remember what Harry says after that? Oh no, okay, so he pulls out a penny and he drops it on the floor and he's like,
Oh,
and
yeah.
he's
He's like just
he's like,
making sure
yeah,
gravity still
yes,
works.
just making sure gravity still works. And I was like, dude, that's it. That's perfect for that scene right there.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, it's the closest Morgan has come so far to apologizing to Harry.
Yeah, yeah,
Say he says like, I don't believe you're evil. I don't think what you do is out of malice or evil,
yeah. That's it. Yep.
but out of a lack of self-discipline and knowledge. He's like, I think you need to be trained more and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I thought that was a great scene with Morgan. I love it anytime that he has to kind of eat crow a little bit.
Yep. And then another one that we've already kind of talked about this. It's at the end where Harry gives the book of or the word of Kemmler to Mavra, and like I said, we've already discussed this, but he basically he puts her, you know, or he says something like he's like, if you ever come back or if you ever hurt my friends, I will kill you. And she's like, you don't have the power to kill me. And then he goes on saying like,
Yeah,
I do have the power. I've got Mab wanting me to be the White Knight. I know
a
the word of
coin.
Kemmler. I know, yeah, exactly the coin. I know how to, or he's like, yeah, I've got a demon that's itching at me for to take this power. And I've also know
Yeah,
how to do the Dark Hallow. And then he says, or does he say it again? He's like, does he reiterate? And he's like, I don't know. He says something and it makes Mavra like freak out. Like she gets
yeah.
frightened. She gets
He
scared.
he basically just goes super hard on her, and
Yeah.
he's like, if you ever try this again, I will essentially obliterate you from the earth. Like
Yeah,
I
and
will.
he's I was
Yeah.
just like yes, he goes he like tells her he's like I will go to any length
Yes, that was it.
no matter what happens, I will go to any length to destroy you. And he's like, "Do you understand me?" And she's like
Yes.
and she doesn't say anything and he's like, "Say it. Do you understand me?" And Mavra says, "I understand you." And then
Yeah.
disappears and I was like, "Dude, that's so
Yeah.
badass. So
Yes.
badass."
And the way James Marsters kind of did that too, like
Yeah.
when she said that, it was very like this like coward me kind of,
Yes.
I understand you kind of like, just
Yeah,
she
like
was
she's almost like
scared.
shying away, kind of. You had the
Yeah.
feeling that she was like shying away and kind of freaked out. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I really really liked that scene. And of course, how are we not going to talk about Harry and Butters reanimating a
Oh, of course. Yeah.
dinosaur
Yep.
and riding through the streets? This was so awesome. I
Yes.
I love this scene every time. They're riding through Chicago on a freaking dinosaur, this huge dinosaur.
Yeah.
They're stepping on like bad guys. They're stepping on cars.
Yep.
Sue eats the assistant to Corpse Taker, the ghoul.
Yep.
She just
Lee
like bites him
Sean.
up. Lee
Yeah.
Sean. And like yeah, Sue is just like trampling
Yep.
everything. That scene is fantastic. And then Harry shows up with Sue to Lucio and Morgan, and he just kind of gets down off this dinosaur, and it's like sitting behind him.
Yeah.
And Morgan and Lucio are like, what?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
what did you do, dude? And then of course he has to make a case that, the laws of magic are specifically against humankind. They're
Yep.
not against dinosaurs.
Yeah.
So he kind of slides through a loophole there.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, they're like even Lucio admits like she's like this is an abomination of magic, but isn't it amazing? Like
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
yeah.
And there's another part with that too. Towards the end when he's running the dinosaur like almost into the Dark Hollow or close to the Dark Hollow, the Sue starts to get like enraged, right? Like very angry, and he puts his hand on her and he's like, I can't control her. Like I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm trying to tell her something and she's not doing it. And then he realizes he's like she's so enraged. Um, and he's like, man, I thought about this, and he's like, you know what I need to do? I need to encourage the rage and
Yes.
point it in the right direction. And then he does that. He's like, I want you to go crazy, but please do it this way. And then she
Yeah.
does, and it goes nuts all over everybody.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Oh, dude,
yeah.
yes. And we didn't even talk about Bob.
Oh,
He
yeah,
we have this scene early in the book where Bob is
yeah, yep,
Harry is trying to get information out of him, and Bob used to belong to Kemmler, and so he wants Bob to like tap into that side of him because Bob had like shut it off.
yeah.
Um, and so then the evil Bob comes out and is like about to kill Harry, and yeah, it's just like this crazy scene where it's
Yeah,
like,
so
oh, this is going terrible.
yep, so let me add to that a little bit. So in that scene, he the starting, he gives Bob permission to come out of the school until the end of the conversation. And
Yes.
so then he asks him to like, think about all the stuff he does, and all of a sudden Bob goes crazy and he's like about to like kill Harry, like with this cold energy that Harry's lips are blue, he's turning cold. And then Harry thinks about it, he's like, Bob, end of conversation. And then the
Yeah.
lights, he goes back into the school and whatnot, and then Bob's like, well, what happened? And Harry's, he says something, he's like, or I don't know what he says, but he's like basically like that was crazy. And he's like, did I
Yeah.
hurt you or something like that? And then Harry's inner monologue is, I'm so glad I remembered
The
uh,
loophole.
the loophole or the yes whatever the certification of what he said to
Yeah.
to stop that attack and whatnot, because that would have been bad if he didn't have it. Super bad.
And then what's interesting is he tells Bob, he's like, I want you to kill that part of you.
Yeah,
Like he's
shut it
like
off. Never bring
you
it out
need to
again for
cut
anybody. Yeah, sorry.
right. And so yeah, he does exactly that. And that'll come up later in a few books, the action of Bob cutting that part of him
Yep.
away because something happens to that part of him.
Yeah. Yep.
And then what's interesting about that though is because that is a permanent change, Cowell takes the skull back and Bob turns his eyes purple or blue or whatever to make it appear as
Well,
though
no.
he
So
is his old self.
I'm gonna argue that. So when
Huh.
Cal has the skull, he is that old person. Like we're, because so the way he describes it, after that scene, he's like, Harry, what a smart thing to do to wait until Cal let go of me, to say like, Bob, you are mine. So I think when Cal was holding the skull, he was, or like part of that
So
person or whatnot.
I thought about that too.
Okay.
The rules are that whoever holds the skull gets to tell him what to do,
Okay.
right? That doesn't mean that Bob's old personality had come back through.
Okay.
It just meant that Cowell had the skull and the skull had to do what Bob had to do, whatever he was asking of him.
Yep.
Now, if Bob had fully gone back into evil Bob,
Yeah.
he wouldn't have been able to just come back out for Harry.
Yeah.
When he set him down.
Yep. Plus, it would have
And
challenged what happened before, which is not.
right.
That's not how Bob works. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
Right. So when he set down the skull, or at some point in that scene, Bob was able to let Harry know, like, hey, this is all a ruse. Like Harry said that he like winked at him.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so Cowell sets down the skull. He no longer has control over what Bob does. Bob can do whatever he wants.
Yep.
And so then Harry gave him the command.
Yes. Okay.
Because he's no longer holding on to him. And
Gotcha.
but I thought it was interesting that Cowell probably tried to bring out that old side of Bob, either by saying a certain phrase or word or something, and Bob was like going along with it, and it comes back to like, is Cowell Kemmler? Because the way that Bob was acting for him was the same way he acted when he was in Kemmler's hands and in Dumorn's hands.
Yeah.
Wow. So makes me wonder.
Yeah, no kidding.
One other thing that was kind of interesting is that we hear about Leah's imprisonment in this book.
Yeah.
And we will find out more about it in Proven Guilty. But yeah, I thought I never realized that this was the first instance of us hearing about Leah's
imprisonment's
she's
a good
on
word. That's
sabbatical.
That's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, like she's being sidelined for now.
Yep.
And so Mab is taking over some of her duties. And so we'll see that play out in the next couple books. All right, well, that's pretty much, we made our way all the way through the notes. What are your kind of any final thoughts on this book?
I don't know if there's any final thoughts. I think that we've covered everything that was poked its head out and was exciting to me and whatnot. And I just want to reiterate again that this book in particular, like you said, it's kind of a good starting point for people to come in and whatnot. But third time reading it, and this is like I said, one of my new favorite Dresden books.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't before. It was a great book, but after reading it now and getting so much more out of it, it's like one of my new favorite Dresden books by far.
For sure. Yeah, I would agree. And I think that reading it now, I realize how much is set up in this book. Not so much like there's plenty of like story stuff that is set up in this book, but just in the larger kind of in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah,
this is a really foundational book for setting up how rituals work, like the Dark Hallow.
Yep.
It's extremely foundational for the world building, how the normal people interact with the magical community. It's foundational for understanding necromancy. It introduces Butters, Lucio, Ramirez, all these characters who are with us for quite a few books.
Yeah.
And it sets up a lot of things that the series builds off from here on out. Not only that, it was a huge milestone for Jim Butcher as well. This was his first hardcover book. And so that it's really cool to know that this is kind of part of, this is really the book where this is where Dresden Files really gained a ton of popularity.
Yeah.
And this is where things really started to turn around for Jim Butcher. And I don't mean turn around like he was doing bad before, but just like this is Jim Butcher's like launching pad into fantasy stardom, basically. And so I think it's really cool. It's almost like a little piece of it's like a piece of Dresden Files history, and it's really, really cool.
Nostalgic, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. All right, everybody, we are going to wrap it up there. Thank you everyone for watching, and don't forget to hit those like and subscribe buttons to keep up with all this amazing content we have on the way. You can also follow us on Twitter at Files Fantasy and interact with us here in the comments on YouTube. We'll see you next time, possibly with another Lightbringer video. And keep your eyes peeled for some other smaller reviews and stuff coming from us soon. Until next time, POLKA will never die!